All right. Hi, folks. This should be live streaming on Facebook if my technical skills are at all working. So we're going to get this party started. Welcome to Civic Saturday. So excited you could join us. And let's see here. The first thing I want to do is just say thank you so much for being here. And at any point, if you have a comment, a question, or idea, please feel free to leave a comment and hopefully we will catch it. Looking forward to your input and your feedback. So you're probably asking, what are Civic Saturdays? Well, they are a chance for us to come together around the shared notion that we all have a stake in our public sphere, and we all have a duty and an obligation to be good civic participants. But like anything, being good at being a civic participant requires practice, and it deserves our attention and our praise for what it means to be a good civic participant. So who came up with this idea? Well, the great folks at Citizen University, led by Eric Liu, came up with Civic Saturdays. And just like a religious gathering, there's a lot of power when you come together around a shared desire and a shared mission and bring people from different parts of your community together in a sort of ritualized framework and gathering approach. And that's what Civic Saturdays are all about. So today we are going to reflect on what it means to be a good democratic participant. And I am so thankful that we have Chrissy Wood, Cyreena Boston Ashby, and Alexandria Goddard all here with us today, who are going to help make this a really robust experience. One thing I wanted to do to kick off this event would be to just ask you to reflect on what does it mean, what is one thing in Oregon or about your community that brings you joy? So just think about that. You can leave a comment if you'd like, saying what it is that brings you joy. Or you can just think about it internally, maybe write a note down, do whatever works best for you. But just think about what it is that brings you joy. I'll give you a minute to think about it. For me, one thing that has really given me joy is knowing that there are tremendous folks, for example, at the Deschutes Public Library, who have been such great community members throughout the entirety of the pandemic. I have a friend there who is just the most passionate librarian I've ever met. And she cares so much about informing people and making sure they have the resources they need. And libraries are little engines of our democracy. And I think they are so exciting and kind of underappreciated. So it brings me joy to know that Oregonians really love books. From Powell's to our public libraries, books are a big deal. And it gives me joy to know that we have such robust public libraries in particular. So think on that. What gives you joy? Keep it in the back of your mind. We'll come back to it a little bit later. So the run of the show today is we're going to hear from Cyreena first. She's going to share some civic scripture in the form of a poem. Then we'll hear from Alexandria, who has her own version of civic scripture. Then I'll lead us through a bit of a sermon. Yes, a sermon. Again, the goal of this gathering is to kind of get us into practice of feeling like we're in a community gathering, in a ritualized experience that we're all going through together. So I'll deliver that sermon. We're fortunate to then have Chrissy Wood ready to sing a great song. She's a member of Wren the Band. So we'll hear from Chrissy and her fiance, Dominic. And then we'll wrap this up. We'll see if you all have any comments. And if not, then we'll go on our merry way. But let's get the party started. And Cyreena, why don't you briefly introduce yourself and share a little bit of your civic scripture?
Thank you, Kevin. Happy to be here and nice to see people virtually and know that everybody is joining us. On a lovely Saturday afternoon, I'm in a spring mood. I put on this bright green shirt to get myself in, I think, the festive spirit. And I'm Cireena Boston Ashby. My pronouns are she and her, and I reside in Portland, Oregon, where I've mostly grown up. In my day life, I'm the CEO of a nonprofit called Girls Inc. of the Pacific Northwest, and we provide youth development and after school and now virtual settings for youth ages 6 to 18. And in my background, I've worked in public affairs in the Northwest and nationally for 16 years or so. I've had a really tremendous opportunity to be civically engaged by staffing elected officials, working on lots of ballot measures and creating political action committees. And I have also run for office myself. And so I've known Kevin for a few years now and think super highly of him and was really pleased to be here. And it was really hard picking something to read this morning. You know, I think I'm heavy in my thoughts, and as much as I'm festive in the spring, you know, we're still in a global pandemic and still facing a lot of violence against Black, Indigenous people of color, trans people, young people, and people are just still trying to figure things out in our country. And so I was trying to figure out, you know, how to find something that either touched on it, but I decided to find something that focused in on nature because I think that's what we need right now. And so I'm going to read a poem by, where did my poem go? Pardon me. 1 second. I'm going to read a poem by Henry Van Dyke, which was written in March of 1906. So we just came out of March, and thinking about what the world was like all the way back then, I was laughing because I have a friend who told me that she's a college professor, and she said one of her students wrote a paper and said in the late 1900s, and she was like, you mean like the 1990s? So it's so funny because we're in a bit of a time distortion. So I love this poem called America. I love thine island seas, thy groves of giant trees, thy rolling plains, thy rivers mighty sweep, thy mystic canyons deep, thy mountains wild and steep, all thy domains, thy silver eastern strands, thy golden gate that stands wide to the west, thy flowery southland fair, thy sweet and crystal air. O land beyond compare, thee I love best. And that is taken from America, which was written in March 1906 by Henry Van Dyke. And so I'm happy to kick it over to now Alexandria. And nice to see you and meet you here as well.
Oh, there's so many buttons with the mute and the camera. My name's Alexandria Goddard. I am currently a PSU student, but I also been working virtually in DC. I've been working on some legislation here in the state legislature on suicide prevention and gun violence prevention. And really my background and how I met Kevin is through getting young people involved. And that's my really big thing. And today when I was really thinking about what I wanted to bring to this kind of conference of people who care about democracy, is I really wanted to find something that I thought spoke to not only current events, but events that have happened in our past that helped establish the government that we know today. And so I ended up settling on the inaugural address from John Adams. He's always been a really big historical favorite of mine. You know, he was a very principled, very moral man who stood up even then for what he believed in, including, you know, he never owned a single slave. He really argued for a lot of the equality. He was known for taking his wife's ideas to Congress with him. He was a really a man of the people. So I have parsed it down. It was kind of long, and he's very wordy. But really what I want to get into here, I'm just kind of like launch into it. And it's a little bit wordy, but I think it does a really good job. When it was first perceived that no middle course for America remained between unlimited submission to a foreign legislature and total independence of its claims, men of reflection were less apprehensive of danger from the formidable power of fleets and armies, relying, however, on the purity of their intentions, the justice of their cause, and the integrity and intelligence of the people. The zeal and ardor of the people during the Revolutionary War commanded a degree of order sufficient at least for the temporary preservation of society. In this dangerous crisis, the people of America were not abandoned by their good sense, presence of mind, resolution, or integrity. Measures were pursued to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. What other form of government, indeed, can we so well deserve our esteem and love? There may be little solidity in an ancient idea that congregations of men into nations are the most pleasing objects in the sight of superior intelligences, but this is very certain, that to a benevolent human mind, there can be no spectacle presented by any nation more pleasing, more noble, majestic, or august than an assembly like that which has so often been seen in this and the other chamber of Congress, of a government in which the executive authority, as well as that of all the branches of legislature, exercised by citizens, selected at regular periods by their neighbors to make and execute laws for a general good. Can anything essential, anything more than mere ornament or decoration be added to this by robes and diamonds? So I'm going to cut it there. But what I really like about that piece, and he goes on to talk about how it's important, to not let foreign governments dictate us because we've already lived under that oppression. He talks a lot about how every voice has to be heard. And I really feel like that piece in particular brings everything that is good and pure and idealistic about democracy to the table. And that's what I think we all really need to remember in times when things get really dark, is like, there is this idealistic idea of America where everyone gets a voice at the table, and that was revolutionary there, and it's revolutionary now. So I can always drop a link to that in a comment under the live stream if anyone's interested, but it's one of my very favorite pieces.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Alexandria and Cireena. Those were two great pieces of civic scripture. And if you're watching this and thinking, oh gosh, I loved that, or I have a better piece of civic scripture, or maybe one that I'm more fired up about, let me know. This is the first of hopefully several Civic Saturdays, and I am committed to making sure we have Oregonians from all over the state sharing what resonates with them. So whether it's an inaugural address, a poem from one of your favorite poets, or something that's just inspired you, lyrics from a song, who knows what it is, maybe it's even a painting, feel free to let me know, and we'll make sure that you can join the ranks of the illustrious Alexandria and Cireena, and make sure that you're able to participate in the next Civic Saturday. So now we're at the portion that we call our sermon. So like a sermon, you're going to hear a lot from me for the next couple of minutes, but please leave any comments. And right now, I just want you to start to reflect on that little piece of Oregon or your community that brings you joy. Democracy is not a participatory sport. Democracy just isn't a sport. In a sport, showing up isn't enough. Damian Lillard can play all 48 minutes of a Blazer game and still come out a loser. In a democracy, all engagement matters. If you're participating, then you're not losing. In a sport, the game ends and people move on to the next game. In a democracy, there's no finish line, end line, or final bell. Every action adds to a never-ending process of identifying and solving problems. In a sport, you're forced onto a team to compete against others. In a democracy, you're only on a team if you decide to be. You can decide to make everyone your teammate and to work together with every other player, if you want to call them that. Democracy then is not a participatory sport. It's a perpetual participatory project. I know that sounds like a mouthful. That's a lot of P's. But this message should be empowering for you, for me, for all of us. Consider that we're all still working on the same project as Abigail Scott Duniway, Oregon's mother of equal suffrage. We're all still adding to Tom McCall's worthy efforts to protect our pristine environments for future generations. And we're all still trying to perfect Susan Castillo's vision for a more robust education system. These are all examples of perpetual democratic projects, all projects that we're all still working on together. Today, we'll explore three things. First, what does it mean to be a democratic participant? Second, who's already participating? Who can we look to as examples of democratic participation? And third, and most importantly and most excitingly, how you will be a democratic participant. So first, what does democratic participation mean? Well, for those who don't know me, I'm currently a student at the UC Berkeley School of Law. And any good law school student will tell you that you have to start with the text and the plain meaning of words. So, according to Webster Dictionary, participation means the act of getting involved in something. Participation in a democracy, then, means the act of getting involved in a democratic institution, process, or actor. Stop and think. Based on that definition, are you a participant? Are you acting? Are you involved? With what process, institution, or actor? If you don't have an affirmative and complete answer to each one of those questions, that's okay. That's the point of the sermon. That's the point of Civic Saturdays. Democratic action is best defined by what it's not. So now we're into question 2. Who's participating? Democratic action is not tweeting. I'm sorry. Yes, tweeting is an act, but it's not a means to get involved with a democratic process, institution, or actor. A democratic act requires actually becoming involved with the target of that action. You wouldn't tell your parents you're involved with a new romantic interest because you tweeted at them. That's just ridiculous. You certainly wouldn't tell Abigail Scott Duniway, Tom McCall, or Susan Castillo that you're doing your part to build a participatory project by sending out 280 characters. They would expect more from you, and I think we all expect more from one another. Involvement entails an obligation on all parties. After all, you can't ignore someone who's involved with you in that same participatory project. Involvement is ongoing. You become a part of that democratic process or institution, or connected with that democratic actor. Involvement requires being informed. You can't be involved if you don't know what's going on, if you don't know when that next meeting is occurring, if you don't know when that official you want to lobby is going to be hosting a town hall. So now that we have a better idea of what it means to be a democratic participant, who are our role models? Who is a democratic participant that we can look to? Well, I think democratic participation looks like Rory, a Gen Zer, and West Linn city councilor. Before seeking and earning election, Rory was passionate about transparent government, even as a high schooler. Name the last teen you met who is stoked about public records laws in high school. But that's Rory, and Rory made it his cause to get involved in efforts to enforce public records laws. He attended city council meetings, he paid attention, and he rallied his community around transparency. Democratic participation looks like Moira and the folks at the Oregon Food Bank, registering people to vote so that they can then go perform their own participatory acts. And democratic participation looks like Wendy and the AAUW, helping organize information sessions for folks to learn more about ideas to make our democracy more representative and more fair. Rory made himself a part of City Hall in West Lynn. Moira offered a path for people to formally participate. And Wendy engaged her community by deepening their understanding of democratic structures. Rory, Moira, and Wendy, they're all democratic participants. Their efforts were not 280 characters long. They were not one-off bursts, but they were steps in a perpetual project to identify and solve problems. Rory, Wendy, and Moira, they're not done. They have a lot of work to do, and their efforts toward these projects won't be finished when they are. Instead, they're going to pass the torch, and that's the exciting thing about us all becoming democratic participants. So, third and finally, it's time to plan your participation. But before we do that, I do want to acknowledge that there are some real and valid barriers to participation. Childcare, long work hours, or frankly, a well-deserved lack of faith in a system that has systematically and for centuries long undermined certain communities and disenfranchised certain communities. Those are all real and valid barriers. If something is in the way of your efforts to become a democratic participant, that's what this community is for. That's what the people who are watching this video want to help out on. That's what the people who are speaking here today want to assist on. So know that if there is a barrier, we want to help you lower it, and we want to help address that barrier so that everyone can participate in the way that's appropriate for their situation. Now, it's worth pointing out that participation doesn't have to be all or nothing. Take Rory, for example. His participation started in the middle of high school. Now, he didn't drop out to go attend every West Lynn City Hall meeting or to just sit outside of city council offices. He still went to school, he still did extracurriculars, but he was still involved. It wasn't his full-time job, it was just a part of his life. And that's all we're asking here today is democratic participation doesn't have to derail everything, but it should be a part of your habits. It should be a part of who you are and how you identify. And your participation should align with your reality. The key is just that you're finding some way to get involved in this perpetual project. So, what is your act? How are you involved? How are you shaping a democratic process, institution, or actor? Now, this may be a great time to think back to that little part of Oregon that brings you joy, or that little part of your community that brings you a lot of joy. So I mentioned that mine is public libraries, and in particular, the Deschutes Public Library. So what does it mean to be a democratic participant to support public libraries, for example, or to support whatever it is that brings you joy? Well, it may be going and meeting with some of those stakeholders to understand what are some of their resource constraints, what are the issues that the public library is facing, and then seeing what you can do to help support that institution, that process, or that actor. Whatever it is that brings you joy, I'm sure it could deserve some protection. And I'm sure it could deserve just you calling attention to why it's so important. Maybe it's a local park down your street. Is it dirty? Is it trashy? Go pick it up. Go make it an even better place to celebrate for more folks. So start by identifying a cause. Wendy was frustrated about our election system. That's what motivated her. Next, find the democratic institution, process, or actor that's associated with that cause. That's why Wendy joined the AAUW and identified some specific reforms to start exploring and sharing. And finally, decide on your act. It can be hosting an info session like Wendy, or simply observing like Rory. I sit on a committee right now, and there are about 2 people who, without a doubt, they show up at every public comment period, and they make their 2 cents heard again and again and again. Now, all the more power to them. They get their voice heard, and it's not always the case that their goals become the committee's actions, but I guarantee you, every single committee member knows who they are. knows what they care about and is thinking of that in the back of their mind every time we make a decision. That could be you. That should be you. If there's an issue that you're passionate about, showing up can make all the difference because people will see it matters to you. Now, remember that democracy is a participatory project because we all share the outcome. And the outcome will certainly be one you don't like if you're not involved. Participating in a democracy requires getting involved and getting involved with specific democratic institutions, processes, or actors. So to be a little flippant, don't be a spectator. Don't be a freeloader. Today we learned that participation requires actively getting involved. And we learned what participation can look like by analyzing Rory, Wendy, and Moira. Our duty now is to motivate one another to become democratic participants and to continue this perpetual project to make Oregon an even better place to call home. So to conclude this brief sermon, think back to that object that brings you joy, to that thing that brings you joy. And if you're willing at some point, whether it's a comment now or an email down the road, send me what you're going to do. How are you going to be a democratic participant? And I'd challenge you to go even a step further and share how you're going to be a democratic participant with others. There's some real power in saying, hey, this issue matters to me, and here's what I'm doing about it. I think the more we can show one another why we care and what we're doing about it, we can begin to restore our faith in our democracy, in our civic culture, and in our social fabric. So you made it through a Civic Saturday lecture. Congratulations. And now to kind of celebrate all of this, we get to turn to Chrissy Wood and her fiance Dominic to hear a wonderful song. Chrissy and Dominic, y'all ready?
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, camera is thinking about being a camera. All right, well, we're gonna be
Try again.
invisible.
Try just turn it off and on.
Turn it off. Turn it on.
All right, it wouldn't be a Zoom meeting
Yeah.
without technical difficulties. All right.
It's what unites us all. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm Chrissy. This is my fiance Dominic. We're gonna sing a song called "White Flag" by Joseph, which is a little band out of Joseph, Oregon.
It's true.
And I chose it because I think that being civically engaged is a fight and a battle, and it's like to fight for what we believe is right and what we think that we need and deserve, and like burn the white flag, man. Like, let's do the work together. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yelling's getting loud. Keep it down now. Keep it down now. There's talk going around this town. Keep it down now. Keep it down now. Noises closing in from all sides, warning all the ways to die. They'd say you'd better give up, you'd better give up. Oh, I'll be an army, no, you're not gonna stop me getting through. I'll sing a marching song and stomp through the halls louder than you. I could surrender, but I'd just be pretending. No, I'd rather be dead than live a lie. Burn the white flag. Burn the white flag. Whispers fill the air. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Sometimes it's all I've got to spare. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Noises closing in from all sides, warning all the ways to die. They'd say you'd better give up, you'd better give up. Oh, I say I'll never give up, I'll never give up. Oh, I'll
much.
Yeah, it was our pleasure.
Wow, I can't wait until we're able to do this in person because I just wanted to jam, and I imagine others have the same mood.
Get some tambourines in here, some shaker eggs, clapping. It'll be great.
That's about the extent of my music talent. Thank you both so much for being here and participating.
Yeah, it's been our pleasure.
Awesome, folks. Well, so Civic Saturday, we've experienced just a part of what this can be and what we want it to be. Obviously, I am so grateful to Chrissy and Dominic, Cyreena and Alexandria for making this all happen. I hope that this is restored just a little bit of that flame, that we can join together and make big things happen through democratic participation. So whether it was the sermon, the songs, the scriptures, if any of that motivated you, if any of that gave you a little spark of joy, let me know. Let me know if you want to get more involved, if you want to see yourself on the big Zoom screen, or hopefully on the stage when we're able to make this happen in person. And one other ask I have for all of you is I run a blog that is hosting this Civic Saturday, so to speak. It's called The Oregon Way. You can think of it as Oregon's most boring op-ed page. It's not for extremism, it's not for sensationalism, and it's not for partisanship. All we want to do is share ideas for how to improve Oregon. And I bet you have a slew of those ideas, and I want to hear about them, and I want to help make sure other Oregonians know about them. So send me a message if you want to get more involved. If you want to connect with any of our great participants today and their tremendous work, let me know as well. And please send us your feedback and get ready for one day a Civic Saturday in person. It's going to be magical. It may be 6 feet apart, but it's going to be even more transformative. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you again to Alexandria, Cyreena, Chrissy, and Dominic. Love it. All right, folks. Well, we'll sign off, but thank you again. And feel free to share this with others. And thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks,
Keep us in the
y'all.
loop.
Thank you. Take
Thank you
care.
for having us.